Welcome back to How to Craft Fair. This is a very special video today because it's covering a topic that you've requested for a long time, and I'm excited to finally cover it in depth. A craft fair vendor or an organizer who is shy, an introvert, or someone with social anxiety, they face a lot of challenges. However, you shouldn't let that prevent you from getting out there and showcasing your work or having an event of your own. This video is all about simple yet effective strategies that you can use in order to overcome your anxiety and be a successful craft fair vendor or organizer. Since this video definitely applies to me because I have social anxiety, I'm going to mix in some tips that have worked well for me in the past, in addition to providing content and tips that I've researched so that you can get a very broad scope of information and take what is going to apply to your situation in order to get you out there and have you feeling good about being at an event. So let's go ahead and dive in. Now, the first thing I want to say is that you're not alone. I guarantee you that you're not the only vendor or organizer out there with social anxiety. And if you're a first timer or you're new to craft fairs, you've also got to realize that every single vendor and organizer participating in an event was also at one time a first timer. So try to avoid the feeling of I'm going it alone. Okay, so sometimes those of us with anxiety, we can get trapped in that feeling like I'm the only one going through this, and why is it me? Why does everybody else look like they're kind of coasting through this? At one point, everybody was a first timer. Okay, so I've got another piece of advice for you on this specific topic. Let people know it's your first time, especially if you're a vendor, okay? So you'll be surprised how many customers, once they know that information, they're going to give your items a chance, and they might even purchase something from you knowing that you're a first-time vendor, okay? So it kind of gets them excited to see that you're excited out there, for the first time. So I would even consider literally putting a sign at your booth saying, "This is my first ever show," or something like that. Like, make it celebratory, make it exciting, but it's okay to let people know that it's your first time. And again, you might be surprised with the feedback and the purchases that you get from it. Also, if you're a veteran vendor who has experience, but you're still nervous and you still get those pre-show jitters, it's okay. Just believe, just breathe, and overall believe in yourself. Okay, so you're there for a reason, and people are attending shows because they're just excited to come and see some art and, chat with vendors. So don't worry about it. Try to just relax, try to just breathe and take things one step at a time. Okay, so this next set of tips are great for both first timers and veterans alike. So sometimes veterans get nerves and stuff like that. So I hope that these tips kind of cover everybody. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is preparing in advance. Plan your booth setup, your pricing, and all the inventory that you're going to be showcasing ahead of time so that you feel more confident the day of the fair. A big part of what we'll be discussing in today's video is preparedness. So for many of us with anxiety, a trigger that can kind of onset some negative feelings is when we're thrown curveballs, when we think we've got things under control and an unexpected change occurs and it's up to us to adapt on the fly. That can really trigger a lot of tricky feelings and emotions. So one thing you can do to combat this is to get all the details hashed out in advance. To be more specific, you can confirm with the organizer where your booth is going to be at the event, like as far as the layout. Is it going to be a wall space, a corner spot, in the middle of a row, etc.? Then come up with specific visions for your layout of your booth before the show so that your setup is already blueprinted in your mind. Take pictures of your practice setup if you need be. So, set it up in your garage or your basement or your backyard, wherever, in advance of the show, and then take photos of it or make a drawing, whatever you have to do. And then that way, when you get to the event and you start setting things up, you're going to have that down, and that's going to be one less thing to kind of worry about and stress over in the morning. Another thing you can do for preparedness is to be ready with your inventory. Get as organized as possible at home so that when it comes time to pack up for your event, the stress level stays low. Okay, so if you have like your craft room, or maybe you do this in your basement or your garage, get things all set up and laid out so that you know what you're bringing, and keep it divided if you can from all of your other supplies and materials at home. Okay, so try to set this like in a corner or something where when it comes time to pack up, you can just pretty much grab everything that's in that little area and go. Also, learn to be okay with not having everything made in time for the show, because life happens, right? Sometimes there's more important things that come up in our lives than a craft fair, okay? And that's okay. If you were only able to produce, say, for example, like 85% of the inventory that you initially wanted to take to an event, just relax and be satisfied with that. Be grateful to have any kind of opportunity at all to showcase your works. And then another specific tip on preparedness is to help yourself by planning your pricing in advance. So whether you mark or you tag your items individually, or say, for example, if you price your items by size or the type of item, if they're in a grouped pricing setting, just make sure to come to the show prepared. The less scrambling you do at the show, the less likely you are to onset those anxious feelings. So now I want to discuss practicing small talk. Prepare a few conversation starters or questions to ask customers in order to make interactions easier. I know this might sound kind of like a goofy exercise, but the more repetition you put in, the more normal speaking about yourself and your work will become. Even if you only get just like 2 or 3 different talking points or conversation starters memorized to where you're comfortable with them, that's all you need. Because here's the thing, you guys. Visitors don't know that you've been sharing the same stories all day to other shoppers, because it's not like they're going around talking to each other as shoppers and saying, "Oh, did John tell you the same stories he told me?" That don't matter. They're not going to do that. Okay. So don't feel weird about sharing mostly the same details or the same story, or even just having the same conversations basically to different people all day repetitively. Okay. Because this is basically what all vendors do anyways. You know, whether or not they have anxiety, you're kind of just having those same conversations over and over. So it doesn't matter if your dialogue is new to you. What matters is that it's new to them. Okay, so that's really all that it boils down to. And you can kind of take comfort in that repetition. So like I said, get a handful of conversation starters or talking points down, and to the point where you're okay with firing those conversations up. And a lot of times that's all you really need. So just keep that in mind, and hopefully again that takes your stress level down. So we just talked about dialogue, but another thing you can do is to focus on your craft. So if you have a good enough booth and a very attractive layout and presentation, you might not need to come up with too many conversation starters. Sometimes your products can more or less speak for themselves if you've put genuine thought and effort into your booth setup. So definitely take that part seriously, because it may ease a bit of that social burden off of your shoulders. Now, another thing I want you to keep in mind is to focus on your passion. So remember why you started creating your crafts in the first place. Let your passion for your work shine through when talking to customers. When you're at a craft fair as a vendor, it's definitely okay to reflect inward in order to have conversations outward. Today, at a craft fair, whether you're a vendor or an organizer, it's okay to talk about yourself, your work, your journey. And I understand that a lot of people feel a little bit weird talking about themselves, but understand that people are approaching your booth and they're coming to your event because they admire your work and what you've put together that day. So it is okay to talk about that. Sometimes you can lean on your passion because people are there for it. Now, a great technique that you can use for drawing people into your booth and getting them to check out your items is to offer samples or demonstrations. So this can pull people into your booth without you having to necessarily initiate a conversation. It also provides you with a very easy starting point for small talk and easy conversations about your products. So consider making this an element of your booth if you struggle with anxiety, but you still want to create some big sales and draw a lot of people to your booth. So think of different samples that you might be able to provide. So immediately you start thinking about all the different food vendors that are out there, right? But if you're not a food vendor, sometimes you can do a demonstration or some kind of product technique video. Another thing that you can do is highlight various ways that people can use your products. Okay, so that can be kind of a nice way to draw people in as well. So get them thinking about all the different ways that they can use your products, whatever the application might be, all right? And then that kind of gets ideas going in the visitor's mind. And again, you might not have to lean as heavy on the conversation side of things because you're already kind of giving them ideas and painting a picture in their minds for how they can use your items. Now, another thing that you can do on the side of conversations is let a tablet do the talking. One easy way to take some pressure off of you as a vendor is to have a tablet at your booth that shows an interesting video about the creation or use of the products. Be sure to take your time when you're filming this, okay? So if you decide to go this route, try not to more or less half-ass it. I mean, put some pretty good effort into this, okay? So one thing that you want to think about as far as high-quality content is the quality of the image itself, all right? So you want to have a nice, clear picture. You want to have good lighting, and then make sure that your shots are up close. Okay, so you want to get some sort of up close view and, not take the video like standing 10 feet away so where you can't really tell what's going on. All right, so think about the lighting, how close you are to the shot, and just make sure that you've got good quality of the camera in and of itself. Have this video playing on a loop and keep the video very short. I would recommend 30 seconds or less because that way when people are walking by a craft fair and they're kind of walking and approaching your booth, you're not having a video that is like 10 minutes long where maybe they only see a small slice of what's going on. You want to kind of give them as much of the story as quickly as possible in this video. I would also recommend that you have some type of captions or a voiceover, possibly even both. Okay, so type out some phrases and maybe there's like steps in your creation process, like I do this, then I do that, and then that's the finished product, and then this is how you can use it. You might want to type all that out, and have that kind of popping up as a caption, and then read it over the video too. So do a voiceover, and then that way it's pretty much covering every audience, okay? So if the venue is very loud and you can't hear, you can kind of still see and read what's going on. And then you're also being considerate of people who might have challenges with hearing or vision. You're kind of covering everybody, right? So this is a very easy way, an entry point into conversations with customers. It won't always be on you as the vendor to think of something interesting to say. Sometimes the video itself will do some of the talking for you. All right, so one of the best things that you can do as a craft fair vendor or honestly an organizer is to find partners, okay? So if possible, team up with a friend or a family member who can help with sales and interacting with the customers or visitors of the event. This is, again, one of the easiest ways to combat feelings of anxiety because you will have someone familiar by your side, first of all. So it's a familiar face, you know them. You'll also have a supporter with you who knows you and the feelings that you might be struggling with at the event. Okay, so that's very important to have somebody kind of in your circle who understands you. And there will be somebody there who can help you interact with some of the shoppers so that it's not all on you. So you can kind of lean on them a little bit. And that takes me into my next tip, which is to take breaks. So if you have a partner with you, allow yourself some alone time or breaks throughout the day to recharge. This can help you just to take a breath so that you don't have to feel like your on switch is flipped on for the entire day. Okay, so I think for some of us with anxiety, it's important to be able to step back every now and then, breathe, and just recenter ourselves. You kind of have to remove yourself from the situation that you've been, diving into. Okay. So if you don't have a partner with you at your booth, try and get along with your neighboring vendor and ask if it's okay that they watch your booth for 5 or 10 minutes. And then, of course, return the favor for them. And yeah, the thought of this might be scary, watching, okay, not only your booth now, but then watching your neighbor's booth for, 5 or 10 minutes. That can be kind of scary, but you can do it. You really can do it. And if a customer approaches their booth while they're away, just say that you're watching their booth for them and you're glad to help if they want to make a purchase, or you can, help with the transaction, or they'll be back very soon if they have some kind of questions. So this one line of dialogue is both polite to the shopper and to the vendor who's away, while also conveying that you want to keep things simple. Okay. So I think it's a really respectful way to do it. Again, just say, hey, I'm watching this booth for my neighboring vendor. They'll be back in a few minutes, but if you want to make a quick purchase, I'm glad to help with that. Otherwise, stick around and they'll be right back to help answer your questions. That's all you got to do. Okay. Just that one line is going to help you out so much. And then that way you're gaining a lot of respect for the vendor next to you. And then you are buying yourself the ability to take a break with that vendor next door. So that's huge. Just no matter how many times you have to say that one line of dialogue to memorize it, to be comfortable with it, even if you sound like a robot spitting it out, that's fine. It's totally fine. I think the pros definitely outweighs the cons there in being able to step away from your booth. Now, a great tool that I've used both as a vendor and an organizer is to set realistic goals for yourself. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. You want to set achievable goals for the fair. By doing this, you've created a vision for success. So you've got a pathway to work on and success that's attainable. So if you set your goals very high and you've set the bar super, super high, that's only going to put more pressure on yourself throughout the entire day. So I'd recommend doing one of two things. I would either set very realistic goals that will give you a confidence boost throughout the day as you hit them, or learn to be okay with not setting any goals at all. And I know this sounds kind of counterproductive as, a craft fair vendor who's trying to make sales, but for some of us, a craft fair is simply an opportunity to have an enjoyable day out of the house, right? I mean, for some of us, it's just, maybe it's not about the numbers and the figures and the stats. Some of us go golfing, some of us go fishing, and some of us are into gardening. And listen, none of those hobbies are free to do, okay? So they all have costs associated with them, and they all require time, money, effort to enjoy as a leisure activity. Well, so do craft fairs. Okay, so there's some sort of associated cost of time, money, effort up front, just like all those other things. Okay, so treat it in your head like a leisure activity if you have to, and not some sort of job. Okay, that might be a good way to approach it. So if you approach it with that mindset, that might kind of help to relax you. And there's nothing wrong with taking a more leisurely, laid back approach to it. So keep that in mind as one strategy that you could utilize. Now, along the way, one thing you should definitely be doing, again, is celebrating your successes. Like I said, with those attainable goals that you set, you have to acknowledge your achievements, no matter how small they are. Celebrate each sale or even a positive interaction as a step towards overcoming your anxiety. So sometimes, again, it's not all about the numbers. If one of your goals is to be like, okay, I want to have 10 real conversations today, not just, hey, how you doing? Get into an actual conversation with people. Maybe you want to do that 10 times. Think of goals and get creative with your goals that you can set that aren't necessarily just, stat and figure based. Maybe it's going to open a door to getting you more comfortable around people, which I guarantee you that is going to lead to more sales eventually. So that's another way to look at it, is maybe you can kind of work on social goals first in order to reach sale goals. Okay, so it's not just one path. And that's really important when you have some sort of, anxiety or nerves before an event. if you're kind of stuck and you feel like you're stuck in your mindset where you're like, well, I'm not hitting this figure, I'm not hitting this figure, maybe approach it from some sort of side angle, and you might just start hitting those sales figures in the process. Now, one thing that's extremely important, especially if you have nerves or anxiety, is your physical comfort. Now, a lot of the things that we've been talking about so far are mental, right? Like our mindset and how we're going to prepare for things. Well, what about the way you dress? What about what you eat or drink? Think about tangible things that you can do to help yourself get through the day. Got a favorite sweatshirt? Put it on. Got a favorite pair of Lucky underwear? Put those bad boys on, right? Like if you have a caffeine addiction, keep it fed during the day. Even if it's something familiar to you, like an object that you can keep with you that calms you. You know, do you have like a lucky penny or a lucky rabbit's foot, right? Just do whatever it takes, okay? So even if it's something that is tangible that you can eat, drink, hold, bring with you, who cares? Being comfortable in your own skin is one of the first steps to getting you through the day. Okay, so set yourself up right and do these tangible things that are going to matter to you as the day goes on. Now, as I mentioned, this video is both for vendors and organizers. So if you're a vendor, sometimes the organizer can help. And organizers, please be willing to do this for your vendors. So if you're a vendor, be sure to mention to the organizer that you are a first timer. Okay, so especially if you're a first timer. One request that you could consider making is for them to assign you next to an outgoing and experienced vendor. So when it comes time for them to make their layout, maybe they can put you next to somebody who may be able to give you some tips and positive energy throughout the day. Also, if you don't want to be in a high traffic or congested area, you can always put in a placement request for your booth to be in a quieter or calmer area. Okay, so we actually had a couple of vendors who were veterans and they have PTSD. So they always wanted to be in sort of like a chill, calm part of the layout, okay, of the venue that we were going to host a show in. And this was a request that we were glad to accommodate. And we loved having them at the event. Super, super nice people. And these are just some of the little things that you can do as an organizer where it's not going to take too much effort on your part and it's going to really matter to people. Okay, so it is definitely going to hit home with people that it shows that you care and you've gone the extra mile to consider their specific situation. So keep this in mind. Now, if you do make some sort of request like this, you know, where you want to be like in a calmer area, if you're a veteran vendor with nerves, or you're a new vendor just kind of getting your feet wet, just keep in mind that, yes, you know, this is going to have a little bit of a sacrifice associated with it where, okay, if there's not as much volume of attendees coming through this area, then your sales, you got to kind of temper those expectations a little bit because, you know, you've requested to be in a little bit of a quieter area. Okay, so there is a little bit of give and take there. And it's something that you can do in the beginning, okay? So just to start getting into a rhythm and get yourself familiar with that cycle of being in a craft fair and everything that comes with it, you can kind of start off by doing this. And maybe as you get more and more comfortable, you can work your way into being in the busier areas of an event. But again, this is just another technique that you can possibly employ in order to make yourself comfortable at a show. Okay, so a little bit ago, I mentioned having a hobby or a leisure type of mindset with a craft fair in order to take some pressure off yourself. Now, that could work for some people, and then for other people, doing the exact opposite might be helpful as well. Okay, so everybody's different, and different techniques are going to work for unique people and different people. So on the flip side, you could have a business sense of mind. So another way to approach feelings of anxiety is to treat a craft fair as if it is a job. Now, again, hang with me because I know that phrase might turn a lot of people off, but imagine yourself representing a whole company as a craft fair vendor. Would that send you into some sort of professional mindset where you hold yourself to a higher standard? For some of us, again, this approach will only add extra pressure. But for others, including my wife, by the way, who experiences anxiety, she found success with this method in that it enabled her to conquer some fears because she represented a brand that was bigger than herself. Okay. And it was just bigger than any individual. So it helped her to understand that she was there for a purpose that needed her to work through her anxiety. Okay. So she basically transcended her fears and was able to get herself to a place because she was like, okay, this is bigger than just myself, and I'm representing a whole brand, So there's a couple of different ways that you can approach it. You can be laid back with it. You can just kind of relax and take a breath, or you can kind of, turn a gear and put yourself in some sort of mindset where it's like, I'm doing this because I'm representing my livelihood, and that's on the line. And even if it's not, if you kind of just tell yourself that, it might take you to a place where you are conquering your fears. So look at it from the two different angles. It's kind of interesting to see what works for different people, but at least there's more than one pathway to go with this and approach it. So think about yourself, think about what might work for you, and go with that. So I want you to remember that being introverted does not mean that you can't succeed as a craft fair vendor or an organizer. Identify your strengths, embrace your strengths, and stay true to yourself. You may find that your passion for your craft shines through any kind of shyness or nervousness or anxiousness that you might be feeling. You can do this, and I am rooting for you. I believe in you because I have all these feelings myself. I get very anxious and nervous before events, especially when hosting events. I mean, I've organized craft fairs that feature over 230 booths with thousands of visitors. And what made me face my fears head on was my preparedness and my openness to be willing to explore ideas that can work for me. And again, my wife and I, it's like we were organizing events together, but our approaches could not be more opposite. I mean, I went into an event trying to relax as much as possible and going into it like, okay, we're going to have fun. Like, not that she didn't want to have fun, but like, I just treated it very, very lighthearted, where, she can flip a switch, and for her, it's like, she has that business mindset where it's like, I'm here to represent a brand and I'm going to kick some ass, and just coming out bursting with confidence, So there's different ways that you can do it. And I just want to tell you that you got this. Okay. You got this, whether you're a very first timer and you want to get into craft fairs and you're just like, oh God, I don't know if I can do this. Like you can do it. Okay. And honestly, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Drop a comment in the comment section. You'll be surprised how supportive everybody is on this channel, just rooting for each other. And I've got your back, and I think everybody here has your back. Okay. So, don't limit yourself. You can do it, and we've all got your back. So please consider liking and sharing this video and subscribing to the channel. Especially if you have a friend that, has some sort of anxiety or nerves, please share this video with them because it could help them unlock something absolutely amazing in their lives. Okay. You never know what the potential could be. So I hope the video gets out there. Have yourself an amazing day. I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much.